Right, our frank talk continues with Floyd Shevabo. Floyd, what's your analysis of? By the way, I would like to know. I've always wanted to ask you this question: how do you find the quality of economic debate in Parliament? Because you seem, during the State of the Nation address that I've watched, at least the last two, you seem to obliterate quite a number of your parliamentary MPs. I'm not sure whether that is the same quality of debate in the subcommittees. For example, subcommittee on finance, subcommittee on public enterprises, subcommittee on DTI. You know, we worry because all we can see maybe is that small window where you are debating there. You can deal with that question as you tell me. What's your analysis of the South African economy at the moment? Just give me some 2 or 3 big highlights.
To understand the South African economy, you should appreciate that in the transition period, in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, the apartheid government handed over partial power to the liberation forces and didn't hand over the economy. That is why we say in the EFF that what has happened was just to hand over political power without economic power. And partial political power, by the way, I'll explain that in terms of what it means. And there was no economic power, and that is meaningless because it doesn't change the lives of the people. So if you were to check the cabinet of President Mandela in 1994, all the key strategic economic sectors were occupied by the white minorities who were representing the National Party. So the Minister of Finance was Derek Keys. The Minister of Minerals and Energy was Pik Botha. The Minerals of Agriculture and Land was Andre van Niekerk. The Reserve Bank Governor continued to be Chris Stolz, who was appointed in 1989. So you could see that they wanted to retain control of strategic sectors of the economy. And once they had inducted the ANC into the new liberal economic framework which they had drafted, and once they inducted the ANC into retention of white economic power, then they pulled out of the government of national unity in 1996, and then the ANC continued with the same economic apartheid architecture which had been designed to basically empower the white minorities. So that is where we have been. And then with the adoption of GIA in 1996 and heavy protection of the white capitalist interest. So what it means currently is that 1994 could have abolished some parts of political apartheid, but economic apartheid is a reality. And what are the features of such an economic apartheid? It's concentration in few hands. Like, it's monopolized economy. Like, very few people are in control of bigger portions of South Africa's economy. It's huge inequalities which are racialized. And one thing which most people do not read deeply into when they look into South Africa's inequalities is the fact that it's racialized. So like, if you were to take the white population only and gauge their developmental indicators, unemployment, poverty levels, they will be number 10 or number 11 in the world economies. So unemployment levels amongst white people is like 7% or less. That is where France, Germany, Austria and all these developed nations are. But amongst the black population, the unemployment levels is 42%. Poverty levels, it's the same in terms of all the developmental indicators, that we still have the racialized economic inequalities that were bequeathed by apartheid, meaning that apartheid was not decisively dealt with in terms of economic redistribution of wealth. Because the ANC just got into the band and said, let's continue with it. Let us go into the global system, capital markets, and attract investments and do all these things. And that has not borne any fruits for our people. There has not been any emergence of major industrial role players in South Africa since 1994. There's not been a creation of a state-owned company to the equivalent of ISCO, which was created by apartheid, to the equivalent of ESCOM, which was created under apartheid, to the equivalent of Sasol, which was created under apartheid. There's not been any major state-driven economic growth since 1994. So there's been directionlessness that is underpinned by the ANC's incompetence, but also the sucking up to the global capitalist establishment. You were correctly saying earlier on that in 1992, President Mandela went to Davos, basically with a framework to explain that we were jailed, we were exiled, we were banished, we were killed because of the Freedom Charter. Now that we are about to take power, we're going to implement the Freedom Charter. And in a split second, that Davos changed his perspective. And he said, no, it looks like we cannot survive with these economic policies. And you must understand that that was in the immediate aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union. And he just fell into the trap because Davos is basically a platform where the global billionaires go to mislead governments and basically